All right. So, hi everyone. Welcome to the Don't Fear the Gap Year panel. So, we have four panelists here. My name is Erin Reichelt, and I am a senior career counselor and the pre law advisor for the University of Minnesota. And we have these panelists here today to talk about their experiences with taking a gap year and how that's impacted the programs that they're in now and any advice that they have for you as undergrads. So we'll go ahead and get started. I'd like each of you to share your name, your preferred pronouns, and what grad program you're in now, and then we'll go kind of back from there in terms of talking about more about your motivations for doing that in a bit. So, Robin, if you want to go ahead and start us out.
Sure. Thank you. My name is Robin Lindeman, and my preferred pronouns are hers and she. And I graduated from the University of Minnesota in December of 2017. And during that gap year that I had, I worked at the U of M. And then I started my 1L year at St. Thomas School of Law just this past fall.
All right. And Ryan, how about you?
My name is Ryan Redmer. My preferred pronouns are he, him, his, and I graduated with a political science degree from the University of Wisconsin-Madison back in 2012. I then worked for 1 year as an international advisor at University of Wisconsin-Madison, followed by 6 years working as an immigration specialist at a tech company down in Chicago. And I am now a master's of public policy student at the Humphrey School of Public Affairs here at the U.
All right, thanks. And Erin, if you want to go next.
Hi, my name is Erin Moses. I'm a second-year law student at the University of Minnesota Law School, and I prefer he, him pronouns. And I did my undergrad at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, and I spent 1 year doing a variety of like teaching and tutoring programs between college and law school.
All right, and last, Dirk, you want to go ahead?
Hi, my name is Eder Castile. I'm a law student at the University of St. Thomas. I graduated from the University of Minnesota in 2015, and I spent 3 years in public education.
All right, thank you, everyone. So, and now I actually want to back up a little further and go back to, you talked, I think all of you mentioned your undergrad major and a little bit about what you did for your gap year, but I'd love for you to go into a more detail about, what you majored in and then what you did, like what your job was or your job or other activities, whatever you did in that interim time frame in between undergrad and your grad program. And if you could also mention, like, if you actually knew at the time that you graduated from undergrad that you were going to go to grad school, or if that kind of came later, that would be great. Eder, how about you go first this time?
Okay. So my major was political science and communication studies. They're very typical majors for someone who wants to go to law school. That's because the law is surrounded by government, and so political science aids in that way. And communication studies helps one be persuasive and eloquent, and that's definitely a skill that's necessary. I worked in public education, which did not require my majors. It did require a bachelor's degree. But what I did there was I worked with underserved communities, including minorities or students experiencing poverty. And what I did was ensure that they were connected to any public resources that they needed to be successful in school. I don't remember all your questions. Did that answer some of them?
Yes, I know. I think the one thing I'd also like you to touch on is if you knew you wanted to go to law school, like when you graduated from undergrad, or if that decision came later.
Yeah, so I knew that I wanted to go to law school since I was in high school. It was something that was a goal of mine for a very long time. But when I reached my last semester of undergrad, I don't know if there's any better way to explain it than that I was out of fuel. By the time I was done, I was like, I'm not sure I want to just keep going and chugging along. As a first generation student, I knew that there were barriers that I would experience that were unique to me. And so I knew that the opportunity to serve my community was there, and that was important. And so I decided to take some time off, and that was really pivotal in giving me my why and my reason for returning.
Great. And Ryan, how about you go next?
Yes. So like I mentioned earlier, I also graduated with a political science degree, as well as a certificate in Southeast Asian Studies. So when I was an undergrad, I knew I had an interest in migration studies and U.S. immigration policy. Much like Eder, I think I graduated feeling a little bit burnt out and perhaps a combination of not being mature enough to be ready for the next step of school yet. And while I knew what my vague interests were, I didn't know exactly where I wanted to pursue those. I also wasn't sure if I was going to pursue school, if I wanted to do law school, or if I wanted to do a different grad program. So I wanted to give myself some time to figure that out. So I worked in those pair of jobs, the immigration advisor at UW-Madison and then the immigration specialist role at the tech company in Chicago. And during that time, I really got a better sense of like, okay, within this field of immigration, here's what I do like, here's what I don't like, and here are the specific avenues I want to explore. And I think I touched on all the answers there.
Great. And Erin, you can go next.
Okay. I graduated from UW-Madison as well, and I majored in economics and international studies. And so I took just 1 year off, and I kind of arrived at my decision to go to law school, I think a little bit later on in the process. I didn't decide until about halfway through my junior year of college that I wanted to go to law school. I was definitely thinking of some type of grad school. At first, I was looking at maybe like a master's in public policy or potentially like a PhD in history. But one thing I found really helpful for current college students, that what I did was I just like talked to a lot of professors at UW-Madison and just kind of basically asked them like how they arrived at their own like kind of decision of to go to different grad schools. And I actually found that a lot of my professors that I talked to were considering going to law school before getting their PhDs in their like respective fields, which I thought was interesting and kind of helped with that process. And they kind of talked about the pros and cons of the different programs. But in my 1 year off, I mostly worked as like a tutor and teacher. So I was tutoring high school students in my hometown, and then I did an educational program actually in Palestine in the West Bank for about a month and a half. And I kind of got involved through that by meeting actually a PhD student who was in one of my Arabic classes at UW-Madison, and he was a co-founder of the program. And so he invited me to partake in that. So that was, I think, a great kind of transition between college and law school. One thing I'm sure all of us can probably agree with is like taking at least 1 year off kind of helps you recharge and kind of reboost your kind of batteries and energy. And I think traveling abroad can be an option for certain people as well. So.
Great, thanks. Robin?
Yeah, so I majored in professional journalism at the U of M. And like Erin, I didn't really know I wanted to go to law school until about halfway, if or after my junior year. And at that point, I really didn't know if law school was like something that I actually wanted to do. So I actually continued to work at my student job, which is I was a digital communications assistant for the College of Liberal Arts. And I still do that now. So I've kind of held on to this job throughout my undergrad and now going into grad school. Again, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I actually didn't really want to take a gap year, but it really did, like Erin said, help me recharge. I think that was the answers to your questions. I'm not 100% sure.
Yes, it was. Thank you. And I think you've all kind of addressed this in various ways, um, but I think that it would be better to just answer in one concise response. But just talk a little bit more about your motivation for doing a gap year. A few of you talked about it a bit. But then we could actually start with Robin again, because Robin, I know you mentioned you did not want to. And so what ultimately pushed you in the direction of not going immediately from undergrad to law school?
Sure. So like I said, I didn't actually want to take a gap year. I wanted to go straight through because I thought for me that would be the best option because I'm ready to go. I don't want to stop. I don't want to take a break. But honestly, it was my LSAT score that I think kind of prohibited me from doing that. I knew that I could do way better and that I needed to take it again. But at the time I was applying, it was only offered, I think, 4 times a year, maybe 5. But I was coming up to that last deadline before I was able to apply for the fall. And I actually went and talked to Erin, and I had a heart to heart. It was like a come to Jesus moment where I was like, I can't make this happen, so I'm gonna have to live with it. And it turned out to be like the best choice for me. Getting that work experience really, really benefited me in my application to law school, and actually now my first year through law school. I thought that taking that break was gonna like halt my progress, but it really didn't.
All right, great. And it's not a plug, like for me. I mean, people come to motivations different ways for sure. But and I guess Erin, if you want to go next.
Sure. So I think the motivation for my gap year what was a little bit similar to Robin's in the sense that I also I took the LSAT 2 times, and I knew I could do a little bit better as well as the second time. So that was one reason. But I think another couple big reasons for me was to like first kind of spend some more time with my family. Like my family lives in Minnesota, and I went to school in Wisconsin. It's not that far away, and I still saw them on the breaks, but I kind of wanted to spend some more time with them before starting grad school. And as well as I was able to, because part of my family lives in Hungary, because I was actually born there, so I was able to go visit them as well in the summer. Um, so that was important for me. And I also wanted some more professional work experience. One thing I'd heard in talking to lawyers and my pre-law advisor at Madison was that going to law school is a lot like going like just working, and it's important to like treat it in that way. So I just wanted to kind of build up my professional capabilities before starting law school. I personally found the gap year to be very useful in that regard.
All right, how about you, Ryan?
I think there were a number of motivations. Like I mentioned earlier, one of the things was I think I just needed a little break from school and didn't feel quite mature enough to continue with that next step yet at the time. Another part of it was the thought of taking on more debt with going to grad school, and I kind of wanted the chance to pay off my undergrad loans, or at least some of my undergrad loans, before I decided to go back. And so it was really refreshing being able to start grad school and have that no longer hanging over my head. So I definitely recommend that if it's a possibility. And then also, like I said, I had some vague interests. Like I knew the general field that I was interested in. I didn't know exactly what way I wanted to go. And so while I had always kind of had a desire to either go on to grad school or law school or something like that, part of me wasn't sure, like, is this necessary for my profession? Can I go on and do what I want to do without having to go the route of additional school? And so once I had a better handle on what it was exactly that I wanted to do with my life and the exact field that I wanted to get into, I was able to make a more reasoned approach to, okay, do I need to go to law school? Do I need to go to policy school? Do I need to go either? How is that all going to look? And those are all things that I was not certain of when I was just coming out of undergrad.
All right, and Eder, I think you kind of addressed this question already, but do you have anything else you wanted to add about your motivations for a gap year?
Yeah, I think that there are some negative motivators and some positive motivators. I was more lost than Erin or Robin. I didn't take the LSAT in undergrad. I didn't take as much advantage of the pre-law programs as I could have or should have. I was a commuter student for all 4 years, and so the evening programs and things like that were kind of difficult for me. So I was definitely lost on the logistical parts of it. And then the other side of it was that I also had positive motivation in that I knew the school district would offer me a position. And coming from a family like mine, I'm the oldest and the first to go to college. And so the opportunity to be a role model was too alluring to say no to, and to just continue to work.
Great, thank you. And I would love for you all to talk about the idea of a gap year, I guess, in general. So all of you have classmates and friends, and I know like the statistics of, for those that go to law school from the University of Minnesota, about 70% have taken at least a year between undergrad and law school. And I'm wondering if you feel like that's fairly true of your classes, or just, you know, among the people that you know, how many people about have taken a gap year, and what types of things do they tend to do just on the whole? That would be great to hear from you all on. How about we start with Ryan?
I would definitely say that my experience has been that the majority of my classmates have taken a gap year. I think I am probably, having taken a 7 gap years myself, I would say I'm a little bit on the higher end, but even that, there are definitely students in my program who have been out of the school game longer than I have, but definitely the experience that I would say most of them have taken a gap year and then, you know, gone off and worked in some field of interest for theirs for at least a couple years.
All right, and I guess I'll go with Erin next then.
Yeah, so I go to the University of Minnesota, so that seems about right. I think about 30% of people go straight, and then everyone else at least takes a year off. I think a lot of people do work in like education and some type of like governmental policy work. I think in people, and I know a few of my classmates have also worked in like the healthcare industry. But I would say like the average for someone who doesn't go straight through is about 2 or 3 years off, with a good mix of people who've taken 1 year off, and then there's a good mix of students who've taken 5 or more years off as well. So it's a real kind of mix in that regard.
All right, Robin.
Sure. I'm not sure about numbers or like percentages. I don't even think I could fathom a guess. I do want to address the fact that when I was debating on taking a gap year or really wanting to go through, I kind of thought that, you know, people would look differently at me if I were to have taken a gap year or 2 years off, because I thought, oh, everybody's going to go straight through. And honestly, I have no idea who's gone straight through, no idea who's taken how many gap years. I mean, there are, in my 1L class, there are, I know, at least 10, 20 parents and people who have been out of school for a while. And then there are people that I know that have gone straight through. So I can't really give a number, but honestly, it really hasn't mattered as much as I thought it would, being a 1L. So.
All right, and Eder, what do you think?
I go to school with Robin, so I can agree with her estimate of the amount of people that take gap years. I just want to add that in terms of performance, the dean's list that comes out every semester is extremely varied. There's no indication that taking a gap year makes you less able to be a good law student. So you see all sorts of people. You see some that go straight through that are towards the top of the class, and you see others that have taken 10, 15 years and continue to perform just as well.
Mm-hmm. Great. And for you personally, how do you feel that taking a few years, or 1 to several years off, really has helped you in your grad program? And we'll start with Erin this time.
I think I touched on this a little bit, but I can, certainly expand on it in the sense that I felt like it really helped me kind of gain a sense of professionalism as well as just able to just take a break from school. I think similar to a lot of what's been said is after 4 years of undergrad, I kind of felt a little bit like burnt out from school. So the opportunity just to work and have a different type of schedule and different type of lifestyle, I think for me was really important because, if you go straight through, there's only, really like 2 months that you have off essentially, because by August, like you're getting ready, and especially if you're moving to a different city or even within the same city, like a different apartment or whatnot. So I think that can help like a pretty much close to a full year or, 2 or 3 years, whatever it is. And just also just doing something different because I think, oftentimes, obviously people go to law school are very driven and very motivated people, but and want to kind of get things done in an orderly fashion. But I think the experiences that you can get in a gap year or several, those are experiences then that you don't necessarily are able to do after law school because obviously the point of going to law school is becoming an attorney. So for example, I was able to do a great teaching program in Palestine that I probably wouldn't have been able to do after law school. So it gives you an opportunity to do things that you want to or always wanted to in your life that maybe after law school there's not quite the same time to do those things.
Yeah, and then one other thing, if you could touch
Mhm.
on, have you ever used, like talked about your gap year experience with, like within your classes or when you're interviewing for jobs or volunteer positions? Like, has it come up in
Mhm.
that way at all?
Yeah, it actually has. I mean, one thing is I'm just thinking back of like some interviews I had was I was asked because teaching in Palestine is a fairly like, I mean, I don't want to, I mean, it's fairly unique in the sense that it's um I guess, yeah, not seen that often, but like I think so that's been kind of like a talking point, but also
Mhm.
just um working as a tutor as well has come up in a few interviews. So I think it gives you, I think, things to kind of just like talk about in interviews, as well as I think it can give you a richer life experience that you can talk to like with your classmates. And it's not to say that if you go straight through, you don't have those, but it's just like you just have more life experience, whatever it is, whether you're a teacher, whether you're working in policy. So it has definitely helped in that sense, building those relationships.
Great. And Ryan, what do you think about just how it helped you in your program or with job searching?
Um, I, I thought I was extremely happy with my decision to take time off. Um, I know that, I touched on this a little bit earlier, but being able to apply for and come into grad school without having my undergrad loans hanging over my head anymore, like having that all in the rearview mirror was fantastic and kind of gave me a better perspective on the financials associated with going to grad school. Like I also mentioned, just knowing what I wanted and to do exactly. I honestly think had I gone to school, had I decided to pursue my education more right after undergrad, I think I probably would have gone to law school. But then having said that, given the conversations and the research that I did, I ended up realizing that that wasn't actually the best route for the career path that I wanted. So that was extremely helpful. Um, I think that having had the opportunity to, work and make money and kind of establish a little bit of a life for myself outside of school, um, it made the decision to come back to school. It gave me more motivation because I knew what I was going to be giving up to come back. And so it got to the point where it's like, okay, if I want to do this, it's because I really do. It's not just because like, oh, I'm graduating undergrad, I don't know what I want to do, so I guess I'll just go do more school, right? I felt like there was real motivation to come back because I think realistically, in theory, I could have kept doing what I was doing and I would have been relatively fine, but I saw the value in coming back to school, and that carried some weight with me. And then with my program, we have an internship requirement, and I know that the process of searching and applying for internships ended up being quite easy for me, just because I think that I had a lot more professional experience and professional skill set to draw on, and that ended up being fantastic. I very much came in expecting it to be this extremely competitive process that was going to be very stressful and very difficult to land. And by the end, I kind of had my pick of places that I could go. So I very much attribute that to the professional experience I gained during my gap year.
Great. Eder, what do you think?
The only thing I would add is that you also grow in maturity between the time that you leave undergrad and the time that you enter your graduate program. And so me at 21 years old and me at 24 years old is a very different person. And I think that helped me because the tone between studying on an undergrad campus and then studying in a law school is seismic. You really have to be a professional, and having that experience in a real in a career and having that opportunity to interact with people at a professional level prepares you for those little things that make you stand out once you do reach that level.
All right, and finally, Robin.
So I would concur with what everybody else was saying as well. But one I know big motivator for me that I kind of talked about was, so I graduated in December of 2017. I also took the LSAT December 2017, which looking back on it was like really, really not smart to do. I wasn't able to devote as much study time as I should have to it, and my score reflected it. So when I was thinking about, taking it again, and I needed to take a gap year. And so in that gap year, besides gaining all of those professional skills as well while working at the U, I also was able to focus more on giving the LSAT the studying time that it needed and the dedication that it needed. I was part of the pre-law scholars program here. And so I really needed that to help me. And I went up 14 points in my LSAT score. So I was like, thank God I needed that. But like everyone else was saying, with building those professional connections as well. And I mean, I have a kind of unique situation where I still have my undergrad job now, but but that has just allowed me to carry over so many different connections and continue to work through my 1L. And who knows how long I'll be working at the U, but just having that gap year allowed me to also have this job as I'm in law school.
Great. Thank you all so much. So I have actually just one more question for all of you. And this one is a little bit more vague, but really I hear from a lot of students considering grad school that have a lot of fears surrounding taking a gap year, or if it's the right thing to do. And I just broadly would love you to talk about just any advice that you have that you wish you could go back in time and give yourself, and just anything that you feel undergrads who are maybe even like sophomores, juniors, maybe thinking through whether they should go straight through or not, what advice you would want to share with undergrads. So I'll start with Erin this time.
Okay, so I think I touched on this a little bit earlier, but I would say, like whether it's law school or school of like public policy, it's always going to be there. So I think a lot of us, especially with undergrad, we want to kind of plan it out and like, be ready for that next step when we're seniors, and kind of have something, especially with people who are interested in going to higher education after undergrad. But I think for everyone, it kind of like Eder touched on it, like it's, the maturity that you gain in whether it's 1 or 2 or 3 gap years, I think it can really benefit you. And like school will always be there, and I think everyone has to be kind of really honest with themselves, like when am I personally ready for it, because everyone is everyone has like a different answer to that question. And when you do go to law school, I think Robin touched on this, whether you're a parent, whether you went straight through, whether you took 1 year off, everyone starts at the same level and spot. So there's no like disadvantage or advantage in going straight through or taking gap years off. So I think that's an important thing to remember. And I think that's like a piece of advice I would have given myself if looking back.
Great, thank you. How about you, Ryan?
I think the biggest piece of advice from me is just take whatever time you need to figure out what it is that you want to do with your life, what route you want to go down. I had two roommates in undergrad who, for as long as they've been alive, they knew they wanted to be doctors. So they graduated undergrad and they went on straight on to med school, and that's turned out to be a fantastic decision for them. But I also have a lot of friends who graduate undergrad and went straight to law school or whatever else, and halfway through, all the way through, they realized like, this is not what I want to do at all. And I just spent a ton of money and a couple years of my life pursuing this, and what do I do now? So I think, you're graduating undergrad at 21, 22 years old. That's still really young. You have time to figure it out. You can afford to take that year or two, try to get your bearings, see what's out there, get a taste of what it is that you like, what it is that you want to do with your career, and then go from there. And that's what I did. And I'm so happy that I did that.
All right, what about you, Eder?
Yeah, I think there's no doubt that in that time, however much time is necessary for that person, they are going to grow. There's no doubt about that. And I think one of the biggest blessings of taking that time off is that you get to meet people who will then cheer you on as you sort of take that next step. I know that I've met some lifelong friends. I even met my fiance through my work. So if it hadn't been for that, I still have a support network at home, but now I have teachers and I have friends that I've met in those 3 years that are people that I can look to when I need support in law school. And everyone here on this panel has done some great work in that time in between. And I'm sure they would all agree that the people they've met along the way are extremely happy that they've taken that step and are now a part of their little, like a fan club or a support group.
All right, Robin, what do you think?
So I think the biggest thing that I would have needed to hear was it's okay for your plans not to go how you imagined them to go. I was so married to the idea of going straight through. And so when it came time to, like I said, it was a come to Jesus moment. I sat down in your office. You're like, you need to think about this. Be honest with yourself, like Erin said. And it was hard, like it was. But being able to be a little bit flexible and knowing that things aren't set in stone, you can change your mind, you can not be sure of what you want to do, and just being okay with that uncertainty for a little bit will really help open up your mind to all of the possibilities that a gap year could give to you, whether that is a break or whether that's professional experience and things like that, or study time for me. But but yeah, that I think that is the biggest thing, is you need to be honest with yourself and realize what would be best for you. There's no blanket, yep, do it, no, don't. Like, you need to see what's right for you and be honest with yourself for it. Yeah.
All right, so thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it. Was there anything else that anyone wanted to say, or just want to throw it out there before we end? But thank you all so much for being here on this panel. I really appreciate it. And for those students who are watching, if you do have any questions, please make sure to reach out to Career Services. We are happy to support you in whatever decision that you make. So thank you all. Goodbye.
Thank you, Erin. Bye.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Bye.